Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.
Now, watch out, Donalogue. Football is coming in a big way this weekend. We have 16 matches across Saturday and Sunday this June bank holiday weekend. So the All-Ireland series, for instance, Cork against Kerry is on the Saturday at 3 o'clock. It's on GAA GO at Páirc Uí Chaoimh. We have Westmeath Galway and Mullingar 5 o'clock on the Saturday. Kildare against Dublin, Nolan Park 5 o'clock. GAA GO, and then the 7 p.m. game on the Saturday is Tyrone against Armagh. That's at Healy Park. That will be on RTE2. As for Sunday then, 2 o'clock in Castlebar, Mayo against Louth. There's an RTE, and Monaghan take on Clare in Clonus, also at 2 o'clock. On GAA GO that day, it'll be Roscommon against Sligo. That's at Dr. Hyde Park at 3. And then the 4 o'clock game on RTE is Donegal against Derry in Ballybuffet. Not to mention a whole host of Tailteann Cup games, including the likes of Meath against Down. So very happy to say Colm Boyle is back with us, 4-time All-Star winner with Mayo. Colm, good evening.
Joe, how you doing?
Yeah, very well. And Darran O'Sullivan, All-Ireland winner with Kerry on the line as well. Hey, Darran.
Hey Joe, how are things?
Just before we proceed, have you two marked each other? Is there some like Titanic battle or scrap on the field that I'm going to be killing myself I overlooked after we're finished here?
No, we probably came across each other a few times, right? But
okay.
we're still talking, so it is grand.
Fair enough. A few words.
Darran was too quick for me, Joe. I didn't get caught in the likes of him now.
Just a few verbals as he jogged by, was it, Colm?
Sorry?
Just a few verbals as he jogged by here and there.
Exactly. Just the black card wasn't in then. There might have been a couple of hand trips or something like that.
16 matches. I mean, like it's feast or famine in GAA, Darran. We're feasting this weekend, but it's a lot.
Yeah, like if you had managed to call them all out without reading them off the screen, I would have been very impressed.
Yeah.
Do you know what? It is feast or famine. There's actually too many to watch, and we were just saying off air, myself and Colm, they haven't been the best quality so far. It's hard to tie yourself down to a full weekend of just watching 16 GAA matches at the moment.
Why do you think, Darran, and we've talked with Colm over the last number of weeks and months, why do you think the quality hasn't quite ignited yet?
I was kind of torn during the league. I genuinely thought, and I like the split season, is like when you go from the elite level for 6 months and then you go back to your club, and no matter how good your club is, it's a lower level for 6 months. It's always going to take time to get back up to the speed and quality. And then I just think the fact that we've kind of stumbled through the league, we go through the provincials, which how much interest teams have anymore, I don't know. And there's just no risk at the moment. You're watching teams and you actually don't know, are they purposely going through the motions because they don't want to show their hand, they don't want to go into the quarterfinals jaded. So there's a bit of shadow boxing going on. That's all I can put my finger on at the moment, because I can't imagine when there's a bit of risk in it that the teams that we expect to play a lot better won't pick up their performances.
Colm, I have to say, I've just had my fill of the phrase shadow boxing in GAA. We just had enough shadow boxing. Can we just start boxing? Is anybody boxing out there?
Well, funnily enough, we were, like I said, Darran was just saying before we came on, this weekend would be unbelievable, Joe, if the third place team was going out, because you would have the possibility of Kerry going to Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Sunday or Saturday, and if they got bet, they're out of the championship. They're All-Ireland champions down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Like, it's a real shame. I know we've talked about this format to death, about the second and third place team going to a playoff, but even a Dublin Kildare on Saturday or Sunday in Nolan Park, like if Dublin lost that game, there'd be huge jeopardy of going out of the championship the last game. But realistically, they're still going to be in it. So yeah, we're sick of the phrase shadow boxing, but I think it's a shame there's not going to be a couple of knockout punches landed this weekend, which ultimately they won't, but that is coming now in the next week or two. That's the reality of it, you know.
What a pro. Extending the analogy into knockout punches. This is beautiful. This is broadcasting. This is top. Can I get you to both explain what you mean by shadow boxing? So, like, people listening there might be wondering, for instance, Darran, because you both obviously would have been aware that you were likely to be involved in the latter stages of the championship. So when you're involved in Munster matches where realistically you know you're going to win, or Connacht matches and you can get the ball rolling, Darran, does shadowboxing mean you're not as fit as you're going to be and that dramatically affects performance? Does shadow boxing mean you're not actually just going flat out because you're so in control of a game? Or does it extend to, we have a few patterns of play that we think when we play Mayo in 2 months' time are really going to hurt them? Fellas, don't use them today. Don't commit them to videotape. What does shadow boxing mean to you, Darran?
A lot of it is, I think it is your attitude going in, and that comes from the weeks leading up to training. You always know how important a game is. Everybody knows the ante is upped in training, the pace is upped in training. Fellas are a bit crankier, and you can nearly see by fellas' body language there's a bit of a relaxed theme to a lot of the games. The pace isn't great. There definitely is teams holding certain things back that they don't want other teams to see. I think it was in the soccer, Jose Mourinho closed down training during the week for Roma. So he obviously has something coming, and I definitely think that a lot of the teams are going to be doing that. They're going to try and hold something back. I think it's a common theme in GA. We're all trying to reinvent the wheel, come up with something new. Obviously this possession game is the new one, which is boring us all to death at the moment. But I just think it's a case of kind of keep your powder dry here. You get a sense of management as well if there's pressure, and there's very little pressure in these games at the moment, and it's showing. It's a casual approach, and then if you look at all the teams that got to the provincial finals playing such a poor quality of football, they all look very poor in the first round of this All-Ireland series, and the teams that got 4 or 5 weeks to work on themselves actually look sharper.
Colm, how would you interpret shadow boxing?
Well, I think if you take Dublin as a prime example at the minute, I think they're almost a team now that need to go into the do or die, this is all or nothing mode of knockout football, because it's been so, as Darran said, there's been so many games, so many chances for teams to look at themselves and where they need to improve on and look at other teams. But I think the likes of Dublin now, and the likes of their big players, especially players that have won so much over the last number of years, they need the cut and thrust now of championship football. You could see, knockout football. You could see last Sunday, Joe, it was almost like a league game to them. You know, they were so off the pace in the first half, especially, and for some of the second half. And I think if that was a quarter final, I don't think Dublin play like that, or it's certainly not a semi-final and then on.
Would you, in your Mayo days as the last one on all this, would you have held back certain patterns of play or certain moves? Sorry to put you in the spot if you can think of any that you knew you were going to unfurl come big time. Not necessarily. I think the main thing that caught us with Mayo is the Connacht Championship and not being at the right level or the right frame of mind or tempo where we needed to be to maybe play a Galway or Roscommon in May. But then later on in the year, if we got through the qualifiers, when the bigger game comes, kind of what I'm talking about now in Dublin, that's when it really got us going. And I think that's where you might see the bigger teams. Yeah, so what I'm hearing from you both, it's less about, we've got a certain trick play up our sleeve. It's just a general malaise, a general attitude. I think so, yeah. Okay. Yeah. You alluded to it, Darran. Possession gate is there's always a controversy, there's always a moan. It's just how we feel Monday to Friday, I think. So there was the draw between Roscommon and Dublin, 1-11 to Roscommon's 14 points. I mean, it's kind of interesting. So Roscommon started the game much like Derry in the Ulster final. They kept the ball for the first 2.5 minutes, and Kieran Murtagh kicked the opening score. And then it was a portent of things to come. 30 minutes. At this stage in the game, Roscommon are ahead by 3 points. And so their goalkeeper, Conor Carroll, gets things moving. He gives it to Brian Stack. 77 passes. Carroll, the goalkeeper, which is key, touches the ball 19 times for 5.5 minutes. Very little pressure on the ball. I saw Maurice Brosnan in the Examiner say that a Dublin hand only landed on a Roscommon jersey 9 times across those 77 passes and those 5.5 minutes. So, like, you know, you've the great and good of GAA saying this is awful. Let's look at it from Roscommon's perspective for a moment, though. First of all, Darran, beautifully effective. You're keeping Dublin away from scoring for 6+ minutes. It's right in the cusp of half time. I don't know if that's part of their thinking, though I suspect Dublin not engaging with them meant that the situation just developed in a way Roscommon may not have seen themselves. But from their point of view, and to kick a score at the end, I mean, every box ticked. This is lovely. Great stuff, fellas.
Yeah, look, I'm kind of torn because obviously you want to watch good football, but when you're playing, it is all about winning. And like going away from that game, they would feel like they should have won it. and it would have been a very effective game plan. I was only laughing when I saw O'Carroll had touched it 19 times. There was a time when, as a forward, if you got 19 or 20 touches, that was your full 70 minutes. But I just think, like, for me, watching the game and even playing a bit with club football, it's the overemphasis on stats. And Joe has 20 touches of the ball and he loses it 5 times. That's not good enough. But Joe could have seen a kick for a goal. But now next game, Joe won't take that shot, that kick. He won't take that chance. I think the risk has gone out of it. Teams are afraid to make mistakes. I can understand it against Dublin. They were so clinical for so long, and to be fair to them, they did the basics better than ever, and that's why they were so dominant. But it's bad to watch. But the bother is with it, the longer it goes on, the more GAA feel, especially with football, we feel we need to change the game up and add new rules, and that's why every year there's a new rule change or something new to be trialled. But it's risk adverse, and let's slowly plod away, and the longer we have the ball, the less damage the opposition can do.
Like, what seemed to happen, Colm, is that Dublin were man for man. That was how they set up. And so if you've got Carroll, and most teams do have a goalkeeper now who's comfortable on the ball, comfortable in possession, suddenly you've got an extra man, and away we go. Very hard to get the ball off us, and it went from there. Like, if any big team choose to play like that, man for man, and then the goalkeeper's a spare man for Roscommon in this instance, like, the way they'll be looking at it, I presume, is, geez, we kept the ball 3 minutes to start off the game, rounding up that 2.5 to 3. Go to 6 minutes. That's 10 minutes of the game killed, with kick-outs included. If we manage 2 or 3, even 2 more 6-minute spells, that's another 13 minutes. Suddenly, against a better team, we've just taken 23 minutes away from the Dubs. That leaves them 47 minutes. Like, very hard for them to even if it's a grim kind of way to look at it, very hard for them to hockey us in 47 minutes. So in a way, I would think most inter-county managers coming up against better sides now are thinking, well, the days of, like, everybody behind the ball and let the Dubs have possession a la Donegal back in the day against Dublin is one thing, but actually, what if we just keep the ball forever? What if we just filibuster this clock to death, and you drive the opposition bananas?
And that's exactly what they did, Joe. They drove them bananas. The surprising aspect for me was, it was almost like Dublin weren't expecting it, that they didn't know that Roscommon were going to try it. Like, they did the exact same thing against Mayo, especially if you go back to that first half, Joe, when they were playing against a gale force breeze. They just held that ball, and again, surprisingly, Mayo didn't really push up, put the pressure on them. The first half, the last day, you mentioned that phase of play. It's probably the most talked about phase of play now at this stage in Gaelic football history almost. But, like, Conor Carroll had so many easy outs every time he got the ball. Like, I know Dublin are pressed up and they're man to man, but they're not really. They're there, but they're not there. Every time O'Carroll has an easy out, and if at any stage a Roscommon player comes under any sort of pressure from a Dublin player, it's straight back to O'Carroll again, and the attack builds from there. It was brilliant from Roscommon. It was horrible to watch, I have to say, as a neutral. It was really, really frustrating, but I was frustrated with Dublin as much in that play as I was Roscommon, because again, I'm thinking, how have you not planned for this? Why is there no one pushing up? And it's actually Mick Simons, after maybe 3, 4, 5 minutes, has had enough here. He's actually the highest man making the tackles and putting the tackles in, and there's no one else coming to back him up. And I'd say at half time, Joe, there would have been serious words in that Dublin dressing room. But you see it then straight away at the start of the second half. I think the first 5 times Roscommon are coming out of defence at the start of the second half, Dublin turn them over 3 times and get 1-1 from it. So yeah, this is not something that Roscommon can rely on and think we're going to win games doing this down the line consistently. But, you know, it was brilliantly executed the last day, but you'd have to look at Dublin on too.
I totally agree. This is all about Dublin. Dublin let them do it. So second half, as you said, they just start releasing men off each other. So it goes back to goes to goalkeeper. Right, well, nearest man press him, and we all shove up in the next man. They're unlikely to get it to the 15th man up the field. So the thing that jumped out is that is not a complicated situation, you would think, for these Dublin footballers to work out. So does that, like, fall back under the guise of we're shadowboxing, this game is meaningless, like Roscommon, if you want to play around with it all day back there and knock yourselves out? Is that what's going on there on Dublin's part?
I'd have to say a small bit. If that's a quarter-final or semi-final, I don't think Dublin are letting that happen. And maybe I'm overlooking into it, but I think there's an awful lot to it. That Dublin were just off a couple of percent, and at that level, Joe, that's all you need to be off. It's just a couple of percent. You're letting good players dictate to you. You're giving them a couple of yards, and they're playing it around. And what you're doing as well is you're letting them build confidence in themselves, and they're moving the ball. Suddenly they're all looking really slick. And Roscommon, in fairness to them, look, but that score aside, they kicked some cracking scores in the first half, and they were full value for their 4-point lead at half time.
Darran, what's your sense of Dublin in those 77 passes then?
I think it does go back to attitude, going into it, going through the motions, and then there's a knock-on effect. If Colm's not going off his man, sprinting to the next one, I'm not sprinting to the next man, and it's just a knock-on. We'll stay a couple of yards off, and like Colm said, I'm there, but I'm not there. And I'd say it was a case of going at half-time, a bit of a rollicking, lads, get up there. Like, Colm was part of one of the best tackling teams in Mayo. Get in there, make tackles. Dublin are always very good at it. And you like that, if you don't take the risk, you won't get reward. And when you start up in the ante, you start making contact, players get nervous. All the inter-county players are good players, and there's no pressure on them. And a lot of them get found out when there's pressure being put on them. And that happened, turnover, score, and you're less likely to try it if a team is coming at you man after man after man and just going, like, certain players will literally go from man to man to man. Eventually someone will make a mistake, but the pace has to be upped up. It has to be up in the intensity.
And how much should we read into that Dublin attitude then, Darran? Because I feel across the Jim Gavin years, such was the health of the competition in the squad, such was the extent to which he seemed to demand or conjure up standards. I don't remember Dublin ever in like first round Leinster matches having performances where we sat around here during the week and said, geez, that, look, you'd put that down to attitude. So like, are you kind of sympathetic to the attitude and you'd say, oh look, they will actually be so much better in a semi-final, that you kind of understand it? Or for you, is it like another aspect where you say that is why this Dublin team are slipping and they should be worried about this?
I don't think they're guaranteed to be better in a quarter-final or semi-final. I just think that, look, a lot of them boys are on the road a long time. They're very comfortable in their position on the team. The squad obviously isn't as strong as it was. It was never going to maintain that incredible level forever. And I just think that standards slip.
Okay. So it isn't something that you just dismiss and say, don't worry about it, it was only Roscommon.
No, I think we've been dismissing it for the last year or so. I think, look, everything changes. You're never going to stay at the top of the game forever. The squad was never going to be like it was for the last number of years, which was incredible. And I just think a few of them are in their comfort zone. Obviously, the way Jim Gavin managed the team, they never made mistakes. They did the basics better than everyone else. You could hardly pick out their scores. They all looked the same. They were just simple football done well in that pace. You're more likely to see great scores off Dublin these days, but you're definitely likely to see a lot more mistakes and wides.
Because Colm, I sort of got the impression, listening to you, that you think it will be fine when they get to the latter stages. You wouldn't overly worry about that attitude against Roscommon.
I wouldn't say it'll be fine. I think you'll see a better Dublin performance, and you'll see them being added a lot more. Look, they've a lot of areas of concern, Joe. Davy Byrne obviously gone off. Jack McCaffrey just can't get fit. No Owen Merchant still in the full back line. You're really relying on Mick Fitzsimon's back there, 34 years of age. You know what I mean? In a full back line that's now been tested more than ever. I think Dublin's biggest problem now is you probably have 5, 6, 7 teams out there that really fancy a crack off them later on in the year, or maybe in a playoff game or a quarter-final or semi-final, and are going to raise their game, and there's no fear there anymore. They know they can take Dublin on now in any game, in any which way they want to play it. And I think that might be Dublin's biggest problem down the line, is that obviously the fear factor is gone, that's 100% gone, but it's the challenge now. Teams want to play them and want to play them in Croke Park.
Well, they're at Nolan Park against Kildare this weekend. It's a repeat of the Leinster semi-final, which Dublin won by 14 points to 12, albeit they only took the lead on 64 minutes. Kildare were ahead for the majority of the game. I mean, two different teams with very different ceilings, but inconsistency dogs them both. Kildare, after that performance against Dublin, you felt were on a certain road, and then they drew with Sligo, conceded the last 3 scores. And like, which Dublin show up? Is it the one that, you know, was all business against Laois Louth, or is it the Kildare Roscommon Dublin? We don't really know. What kind of game are you expecting in Nolan Park, Darran?
Similar to Dublin, and which Dublin will show up, which Kildare will show up. I think after all the talk by Glenn Ryan about Crow Park, Kildare need to show up. It's a hard one. I just, like, Kildare were one of the most frustrating teams throughout the league, and then they came and they gave Dublin a great game. Possibly should have held on for the win, and then you're waiting for them to kick on again. And I don't know, is an attitude with Kildare or what? Look, it's easy to get yourself up for Dublin. I expect them to get themselves up for Dublin, but I'd still expect Dublin to get through it, even without hitting third or fourth gear, and that's only because Kildare just don't fill me with any confidence. They're too up and down like that. I think they can come with a good performance similar to Dublin. Dublin will up the pace for a certain amount of the game the next day, but I don't think it's sustainable by them. I don't think that's there at the moment. I don't think their standards are as high as they were, and I think that's why they can play for 20 minutes like they did and bang in goals against Louth and be so for 40 or 50.
It's funny, Colm, I don't think Glenn Ryan will work it into the week or into his team talk, but I'm sure it's crossed his mind in the car. Geez, I really did go to town on that Crow Park thing, and it sort of caught the imagination. If we get hammered at Nolan Park, that's not a great look.
No, I don't think Glenn Ryan was banking on drawing Dublin again or playing Dublin again later on in the championship when he made them comments. And then, of course, it's at a neutral venue, Nolan Park. So, there's big pressure on Kildare, especially with them comments. But you have to, if you're Kildare, you're thinking the players have to back up Rhino and really go after Dublin, because Dublin, you have to think, are vulnerable. And if Kildare are going to beat Dublin in the championship, you're looking at this now and saying, this is your chance, lads. Go out and grab it. Yeah. Are they good enough to do it, Joe? I don't think so. I think we'll see a better team Dublin performance. The main area, obviously, we talked about Dublin. McCarthy went off the last day, and Kieran Kilkenny. Will them boys feature as well? So Dublin could be down 3, 4, 5 boys from the last day as well. So this is a huge opportunity for Kildare, but I just don't know, Joe. Obviously, you know better than I do what the talk up there is there. Do they have it in them to deliver a performance again back to back against Dublin, and more importantly, beat them this time? You have to feel it's a huge opportunity, but are they good enough? It's very, very doubtful. It is.
Just one last quick question. We'll go to an ad break because I want to talk to you both about Kerry Cork on the far side. Seeing as we're rounding off the football is dreadful and we're not enjoying it very much section, I didn't see Monaghan Derry in full. Darran, I know you didn't. Colm, you're one of the heroic few, I think, that watched the 70 minutes. Carl O'Connell with a late point for Monaghan, 14 points apiece. The way people are talking about this game, it sounds like an abomination. Is that being exaggerated, in keeping with general standards, or actually pretty bad?
It was pretty bad, Joe. Thankfully, I didn't see it live. I was playing a club game, so I watched it back the following day, and probably the best thing I can say about it is I could fast forward an awful lot of it. You know what I mean? Because it just
possession.
Possession, just possession. In fairness to Monaghan, they were really, really good. A huge turnaround from the first day, but to be honest, I expected that from them. I thought they would have huge learnings, as they call it, from the first day, and they got an awful lot of things right tactically the last Saturday against Derry, and Derry were very, very flat now. Very, very flat. I worry slightly about them going forward. I thought that once they took out Conor Glass, once they took out Brendan Rodgers, McGuigan was still unbelievable, but I think there's only so long he can carry that Derry team going forward. But up until the last 10 minutes, Joe, the last 10 minutes was actually really, really good. Monaghan are 3 points up. They'd be kicking themselves. They let Derry score 4 in a row, and it's them that have to come back and kick the equaliser. But I think Monaghan will really feel like they left that game behind. It was a huge, huge opportunity for them. You do realise, you two, by the way, Darran, that like the current modern player is looking at you two with such derision. Like the way you would have looked at the RTE panel talking about the modern day football, and you were watching games from, clips from the 70s, 80s where lads are just booting the ball away every 10 seconds. You realise you're now the old men who don't understand anything.
Yeah, but we haven't not once, we haven't said back in our day the football was way better.
Fair enough, I'll take that point. We're going to take a short break. We've Darran O'Sullivan and Colm Boyle staying with us. Loads more to talk about next.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out hashtag the toughest for more.
Gaelic football on Off the Ball.
With AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out hashtag the toughest for more.
Welcome back. We're talking Gaelic football. We have Colm Boyle and Darran O'Sullivan with us. So Kerry Cork, I guess, always captures the imagination to some extent or other, even if the rivalry over the last 10 years is Kerry 9 wins, Cork 1 win. It's at Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Saturday. Cork have beaten Louth. They were obviously beaten by Clare in the Munster Championship, but they have beaten Louth. Kerry beaten by Mayo in Killarney. Let's start with Cork, because it's been a rough week for them. Heartbreak in the hurling, and then if they opened the Irish Times this week and read Darran O'Shea's piece, I'd say in a few Cork households the paper was folded up and thrown against the wall. So Darran O'Shea, he's talking about the depth and the quality of talent that Cork has had coming through at minor and under 20 level. He's seen it himself, been involved in those age grades. He said that talent has not been transitioned to senior level. It's better than Kerry underage. What we're seeing in Cork at underage level over the last decade is better than Kerry underage. He says as well, they've got some of the best training facilities in the country. They've got some of the best coaches. They have the population and they have the players. There's no discernible reason they should be this poor. And he asked the question, which I'll put to you, Darran. Go back over the last 10 or 12 years. Has any county in the country underachieved and been more disappointing in senior football than Cork?
No. Simple as. To be fair, nothing he said there is wrong, and I think even the biggest defenders of Cork will admit that. It's actually hard to understand it, how a county that size, with that many clubs, with that many players, with the facilities that they do have, and they can say, like you always get we're a hurling county, but they're so big, they should be hurling, football, rugby, soccer. They have enough. They're just excuses. I can't understand it, to be honest. For the last number of years, I'd say people in Cork might think I was being condescending, but we down in Kerry, you want Cork back. When I broke into the team with Kerry, geez, the Cork-Kerry games were electric. Like, the only thing came close with Northern Ireland final. Kerry Cork in Killarney was just electric. The crowd, the noise, the physicality. You didn't know which way the game was going to go. And I think after Cork won in 2010, a couple of years later, a few of the older heads were allowed to leave the dressing room, and I always thought it was a big mistake. They were for a few of them, it looked like they were half pushed out. In other words, they're not going to be starting, or I'm the new manager, I need to put in my thing, get rid of you and get in my own boys in. But they lost great characters. They lost great leaders. The team that won All-Ireland in Toronto possibly should have won more, but they were one of the top teams in the country for a number of years, and they just lost brilliant characters. And when you're a young lad coming in, you need these older fellas there who have been in the thick of it, have been winning Munster championships, competing for All-Ireland, and they didn't have enough from there, I think.
So you feel it's that over quality? Yeah,
definitely. The quality is in Cork. For whatever reason, they're getting to 20 years of age and we're not seeing it after that. It's hard to understand how a fella can play minor and on the 20s. Yes, there's a jump up.
Yeah.
But once you've gone through them grades, you're bound to pick out a couple of them. You don't need to pick 5 and 6 every year. 1 or 2 is all you need. And we're just not seeing it.
And like on the pitch, did you feel towards the end of your career when the comprehensive routine wins against Cork were becoming a bit more routine, did you feel like these are a soft touch, there's a kind of underbelly here, like these lads don't have the mettle, if I'm being blunt about it?
It was a case of, you get through the first 15-20 minutes, everybody's full of talk and guff and fire in the belly at the first 20 minutes. You get a couple of scores, there's 2 in it, 3 in it, 4 in it, they're gone.
Okay. All
of a sudden the bit of lip was gone, the late hit, the letting you know they're there was gone, and that was it. It just, the fire was quenched,
so
and
you break them easily enough.
Yeah, and like that comes from not having the right characters in the dressing room, unfortunately. And this isn't the fault of the younger lads coming through. This is going back 10 years, and it takes a while to build that back up.
It's hard to say, beaten by Clare, Colm, and okay, they got the win against Louth. It's hard to say they're roaring back at the moment.
No, but at the same time, Joe, we spoke about Kildare and the opportunity that faces them with Dublin. I think it's not a big opportunity, but it's a chance really for Cork to show some pride in their county and restore pride in their football. If you go back to the game last year, Joe, they held Kerry for about 50 minutes. I think that game in Páirc Uí Rinn, Darren.
Yeah.
Yeah, so look, obviously we're going to Páirc Uí Chaoimh on Saturday. It's going to be a lot more difficult to hold the Kerry forwards in Páirc Uí Chaoimh and a lot more big open spaces, but there's going to need to be more to their game plan if they're going to really trouble Kerry for Saturday. I think one thing I was looking at, would you pay Sean Poucher off Tadhg Morley and actually hold him high up the pitch, because Tadhg Morley at the minute looks like he's caught in between two stools, and Jack Carney really exposed that role the last day. So I'd be playing a player there that can get on loads of ball and actually put Morley on the back foot going towards his own goal, and it'll obviously stop him protecting his full back line as well. Will they attack the Kerry kick-out like Mayo did? Go long on kick-outs, try and force breaks around the middle and attack Kerry when they're wide open. I think these are the things we'll be looking at. Or are they just going to sit in, try and hold it as tight as possible for as long as possible and hope they're in the game with 15-20 minutes to go? I think it'll be really, really interesting to see what kind of angle they go at. But I'd like to see them from the start really attack Kerry, go on the front foot. I'm not saying all out guns blazing, but really have a go at them and see can they unnerve them. And kind of like Darren is saying there, see can they unsettle Kerry and see what kind of response Kerry have there. And if Kerry do respond, can Cork stay in the game and see themselves through tough moments?
Meanwhile, all is not well in Kerry. I think we can safely say after the defeat in Killarney. Colm, I remember chatting to you after that game, the defeat to Mayo. Mayo could add 3 or 4 goals. They ran through them continually. Kerry looked off the kind of pitch of what should have been a really big game, started this All-Ireland series at home in Killarney. After kind of we're talking shadow boxing. Kerry are they're barely on the skipping rope for most of this year. I don't even know what they're doing. They were pretty appalling by the standards of All-Ireland champions at home. Big game against Mayo. Keep your foot in the neck of a rival, Colm.
Absolutely. And are they vulnerable coming to Páirc Uí Chaoimh? I don't time will tell, but Kerry, you have to feel that was a huge wake-up call for them, Joe. You know what I mean? I know you've said that they haven't got going really this year, and they haven't. You can take their wins against Clare and tip in consideration, but you would have to think that performance against Mayo has really kick-started something down there. You would hope so, because if it hasn't, if there is...
It might depend, we all gave them a free pass during the league. All-Ireland champions, just back from the holiday, Fossa boys long season. Maybe have they trained hard enough? You know what I mean? They look like a team just dead in their feet the other week.
Yeah, well, I said it to you, Joe. Are the meters in the legs? Have they the hard run and done? I know people were saying they'd 5 weeks after the league to the championship. You know what I mean? But you could see they were nowhere near Mayo in that regards. Athletically, physically, they just weren't able to keep pace-wise. They didn't have the pace to stay with Mayo. Were they tired, or is that just a lack of work done? I don't physically know. I think these are going to be questions that's only going to be answered over the next couple of weeks. And if there is a flat performance on Saturday against Cork, then you would have serious concerns. And funnily, I was telling Darren before I come on, I was down Dingle the last couple of days, just on holidays, and I was chatting to a lot of Kerry people down there, and they're very down about the Kerry team at the minute. A lot of people I spoke to didn't think they had a chance at all, which is hugely surprising. But look, I think Kerry will be thereabouts, but they've an awful lot of work to do.
And come here, you're welcome in Dingle, are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, they appreciate good footballers down there, Joe. So I was all right.
Game respects game,
Exactly.
So Darren, I presume you're hearing every rumour, and they've done this, and it's going well in training, not going well in training. What's your sense of what they've actually done post-holiday, post that break from league into where they are now?
For Mayo, Joe.
I'm asking Darren on Kerry.
I'll be honest, you don't hear any rumours.
Okay.
It's unbelievably quiet. And as Colm said, I really hope Cork come out of the blocks fast the weekend, because Kerry needed another test. And I want to see, and I think everyone in Kerry wants to see, have they woken up to the challenge that's there? Because it's fine to turn on the style against Clare or Tipperary, and no disrespect, they're not going to be at the latter ends of the championship, and it's fine to get a nice few goals. But the disappointing, teams play bad, that's going to happen, but the lack of intensity to the game, like Colm said, they were just so far off the pace physically, it was frightening. I don't think they put in a bit of a belt until the 72nd minute or something, and the game was well done at that stage, and it should have been a lot more. The worrying thing for Kerry, and I do think Kerry will get a reaction. I think Jack will get a reaction off the lads. I think they will be badly hurting because there's been a lot of negative press. The bother is at the moment, after an All-Ireland, you do sometimes lose that edge, and it is hard to get back up. And I think Pat Spillane said it, he'd never seen All-Ireland like it, because unfortunately there was 6 months to celebrate it. And I looked at the bench against Mayo, where Mayo were bringing on fellas who could make an impact. Kerry didn't have that, and they definitely didn't have a game changer. All good footballers, but I looked and I was like, where's Jack going here? And as far as I know, the only one thing I have heard is Brian Begley might have picked up an injury. He was allowed to play with the club. He was a guy I was dying to see thrown back in there. He has that pace, that intensity, that bit of spikiness that I thought was missing against Mayo. And in the forwards, Stephen O'Brien, you're hoping can add that bit of grit, but a lot of it is hoping. He missed a lot of football and is still trying to play his way back in. But like I mentioned about Dublin, a few of the boys looking comfortable. I think a few of the Kerry lads might have looked a bit too comfortable, and as Colm had alluded to earlier, you push a centre forward up who's actually a centre forward and going to attack Kerry. Tyke has to come out and mark him. All of a sudden we looked wide open.
And do you get a sense that they haven't trained as hard as they need to have trained across this year? Or do you suspect maybe it's a more deliberate thing, and maybe they're timing their run beautifully? Who knows? But it just struck me from afar as like a kind of, like they weren't like Dublin, we've won 5 All-Irelands, let's give the boys a break. I mean, they'd won 1, and there was just this sense of, we won't worry about the league and the boys all need a rest. And I don't know, it always struck me as an odd mentality to even introduce and speak aloud.
Yeah, like, I found it strange as well. The fellas have, like, when you're going back, this isn't a back in my day or back in Colm's day, but you had if you got to an All-Ireland final, you were going from November, December time till the following late September. You were going for 10 solid months, and there was a lot of training, heavy hacking in that. You'd win a championship game, you'd have 2 hard weeks of training, and then you go back and play with your club till November, December, and you go straight back in, and people talk about burnout and this and that and the other. But like I said about the split season, you played for 6 months, high level, and you go back with your club, you can go through club games a good few years below. Yeah. And then you're trying to pick yourself up, and the games will come and thick and fast. I don't know where you get your training done. So, going off the last day, Kerry definitely didn't look like they had much work done at Mayo. Mayo obviously had 5 or 6 weeks to work on themselves. I don't know where Kerry get the time to do that if they haven't done it already. Yeah, and like Mayo came out the traps early in the league. Like they took it very seriously. They trained hard. So like that, we're in this experimental phase where you don't know, will Mayo physically fatigue now as the games come thick and fast and the season goes on, and in hindsight we'll be saying, geez, wasn't Wiley Jack O'Connor dead right that like there's plenty of time to peak, there was no rush, the games got them fit, is what we could be saying. Or it'll be a case of Kerry never got that block, they left it too late. I think the other alternative is it could be a degree of attitude as well against Mayo. Why their attitude would be off, I don't know, but maybe it's back to that shadowboxing point, Colm. I don't know. Yeah, well, exactly it, yeah, but something tells me, Joe, that you might be too far on with your first assumption there that Jack O'Connor may just get this right and they may time the run perfectly. But I said it to you last week, Joe, there was certainly a desire and hunger element to that when you look at just simple things about the desire to get in and break a ball around the middle. Like Kerry or Mayo players were getting there every time, getting in, winning the dirty ball, setting their team on the front foot, while Kerry just looked like they were ambling to the break zone. And sometimes something as simple as that can be a sign that you're not at it, the opposition is, and everything can kind of unfold after that. Yeah. When you, Darran, said they had no great options off the bench, so like have they lost players since
last year, or were they just luckier with injury? I guess things are going well. You're not looking to the bench as much. In terms of like when you go through the lines, where are Kerry short? David Moran is definitely, I think, Colm, you might have mentioned him, that his absence makes it harder for Kerry to push up on kickouts because, you know, it's easier to just boot it over everybody when he's not there lurking. So he's definitely a big loss, I'm sure. Where else are they short, Darran, in your eye, or what's the talk down there? Which line are they most concerned about?
Well, every line at the moment, but no, like even something Killian Spillane. Killian Spillane's a scorer. Just looking at the bench last day, Tony Brosnan, obviously, they seem to be starting their best team.
Okay.
And unfortunately, when you take off one of your best 15, you're not bringing on someone that's as good or better. Mayo were doing that the last day. Obviously, with David gone, the Mayo kick out. Like even in the second half, Kerry couldn't push up because as soon as it was kicked out, Mayo were winning breaks. Brian Begley, obviously being out injured, would have been starting, I'd imagine. And it's only one or two players, but all of a sudden, your team looks stronger, and the bench, one or two players coming off the bench is all you need. Killian Spillane isn't back for this weekend. Brian Begley, I suppose he isn't available. As I mentioned, Stephen O'Brien's only working his way back fit. That's just three players. And then a few of them just haven't hit form yet. They had injuries coming into the league, kind of eased their way into it. And then all of a sudden it just creeps up, and there is games coming thick and fast. It's hard to know, like I suppose hard probably for me and Colm to talk about peaking as well, because I don't think any of the teams know how to approach it. I'm hearing that word, will they peak later on the year? But I don't know how you peak if you don't know how the season plays out before everyone's new to it. So I haven't bought into this. Teams are waiting to peak. If I was a team, I'd be going at it the exact way now, is get your momentum going. I know they got, I'm going to call it caught in the first round of Connacht just because it was a week after the league. Conditions were poor. It was always going to be hard to stay at that level consistently. But I think that's going to benefit them. I think they got great work done. And then it is about hitting the ground running. And fear factor. If you're going in a team and you're kind of worried about them, you're concentrating more on them than yourselves. And I think Mayo, if they keep that up, teams will start to worry about them and then adjust their game to play against the likes of Mayo.
Okay, so it's all very interesting and a touch confusing and even a little bit frustrating as well, because we don't know what we're watching. Last question to you both at this juncture, and I won't ask you this every week, don't worry, but at this point, Darran, who is your favourite to win the All-Ireland and why?
My favourite is coming from Connacht, but it's Galway. I just think when their big players were missing throughout the league, fellas stood up. They got new leaders. I think they have the best set of forwards at the moment. And I just think that the one thing they were lacking was a bit of depth last year, and I think they've added that this year. So my two, it'd be Galway favourites and Mayo not far behind.
Right, okay. Colm, where are you at this stage?
Yeah, Joe, look, at the reality of this format, you could nearly change your opinion every week when you're seeing teams so often and teams obviously underperforming and performing well. I was asked this a couple of weeks ago and I said my top three, I said Dublin, Kerry, Galway, and maybe Galway, similar to Darran, might have overtaken them, and Mayo as well, somewhere in the mix there as well. But if you ask me different, or if you ask me next week, I could have a different answer for you.
I know.
I think that's the reality of it.
Yeah, it's the one thing actually, people are pretty down on the football at the moment, but it's the most beautifully open, unpredictable championship we've had in forever, so that's no bad thing. Fellas, that was great. Hopefully some boxing starts soon. Darran O'Sullivan, thank you.
Cheers, thanks guys.
Colm Boyle, thanks a million, Colm.
Thanks a million, Joe.
Cheers, fellas. Darran O'Sullivan and Colm Boyle with us, chatting through the Gaelic football situation as we head into 16 matches across Saturday, Sunday. There was no point in even trying to preview all those games, I'm sure you'll appreciate. So we went for a more general chat. Gaelic football on off the ball is in partnership with AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.
Gaelic football on off the ball
with AIB, proud sponsors of the GAA Senior Football Championship. Check out #TheToughest for more.